Welcome to another Fast Tech video. Before we start, please go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It costs you nothing and it helps us out a lot. So please go ahead and do that before we start this video. This video was brought to you by the Fast Tech Pro Auto Kit, which is an automatic screwdriver we're going to be using to disassemble this device today. You can buy this kit from our website at fasttechstore.com or fasttech.ca. Links are also going to be in the description box and the top comment. And you can use the coupon code YouTube for a discount. Let's start the video. For this demonstration, I'm going to be disassembling the CECHH01 system, but on the insides, it's identical to the CECHH01 or 02 or 05 or 06. The insides on these systems are identical. It does not matter what the last two numbers are, as long as it's a CECH, this video applies to you. If you have a PS3, especially from this era, or even a newer PS3 or any PS3 system, by this point in time, you should be replacing the thermal paste. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace the thermal paste. I'm also going to be showing you guys how to replace the power supply. That is, if you have a system issue where the system does not turn on, if you press this power button, there's no beep, there's no light, as there's none right now. This system does not have that issue, but I'm simply going to be showing you guys how to do that so you can fix it if you have this issue. I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace the power supply unit in the system in case your system's not turning on at all. That means no beeps, no light at the front, no light indicators. I'm also going to be showing you guys how to replace the disk drive if your Blu-ray player isn't reading games or Blu-ray movies. Also, I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace the network adapter, which controls the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi on these systems. So that means if your Wi-Fi is not showing up, or if your controllers are not connecting to your system anymore because they communicate via Bluetooth, the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi chip, in some cases, if you're having that issue, needs to be replaced. Basically, I'm going to be showing you guys how to fix each and every single issue in a PS3 CECH system. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to show you guys how to replace is the hard drive. And if you're getting the PS3 cannot start error with a black screen, it's most likely caused due to a defective hard drive. And the hard drive is hiding behind this panel. You can use our pry tool from our Fast Tech Pro toolkit. Lift up this piece. There's going to be a Phillips screw that we're going to have to remove. We're going to hook up a Phillips bit to our Fast Tech Pro Auto Kit. Link for this toolkit is in the description box. We're gonna remove this Phillips screw. And once this screw is out, we should be able to pull out the hard drive like that. That's the hard drive. It's a Seagate, and this is the brand that all PS3s use from this generation. This hard drive here is a 40 gigabyte. We do not sell 40 gigabytes on our website, but we do have 500 gigabytes and up. And we also have SSDs if you want slightly better loading times for your PlayStation 3. Check the links in the description box and the top comment. This hard drive, this is the storage unit of the PlayStation 3 system. So if you have a storage error, the PS3 cannot start error message, it's caused due to a dead hard drive. You're going to have to replace this hard drive. Then you're going to have to download the software from the links in the description box, or you can download it from Sony's website directly. That's the PS3 update file. You're going to have to create a folder in a USB drive named PS3, a folder inside that PS3 folder called update without the E. Yes, it's UPDAT. Open that folder, put the PS3 update.pup file in that folder. Plug in the USB at the front USB port. The second one works the best. You put it in the second USB port. Install a new hard drive from fasttechstore.com. Install the software by following the instructions on screen, and that should fix your PS3 cannot start error message. As I mentioned earlier, this is a 40 gig. We don't sell hard drives with a capacity that small because you can't even buy a 40 gigabyte hard drive anymore. So if you do buy a hard drive from us, the minimum capacity we sell is 500 gigabytes at the time I'm making this video. We're going to remove these Phillips screws to get the hard drive out of its enclosure. We're going to need a slightly bigger Phillips head for the hard drive screws. Once you have the screws removed, the hard drive just comes out. At this point, you'd be able to swap out your old hard drive for a new hard drive. This is a hard drive from a PS4. This is a 500 gigabyte hard drive. And these would also work as a replacement for your PS3 if you have a PS4 laying around. You can take out the hard drive from that and install it in your PS3. As you can see, the interface, the SATA connection is exactly the same. Most of these CECHH01 or 01 systems were shipped with either an 80 gig or a 160 gig hard drives, but there are also smaller capacities as well, like the one you saw earlier. We're gonna stand up the system, and at the bottom, usually there's a sticker right here covering this piece, but that sticker has been removed. That sticker is Sony's warranty sticker, so if you do remove that, if you have any warranty with Sony, I doubt that you do because all these systems are over 10 years old at this point. But just a disclaimer, if you remove that sticker, the manufacturer will know that you've opened up your system because it is tamper proof. So if you remove that sticker, you will lose any non-existing warranty that you have with Sony. Once that sticker is removed, we're going to remove this piece. There's a pull tab on it. It's a rubber piece. We're going to pull it out. And once you have that piece removed, you're going to see a Torx T8H screw in there. We've got that hooked up to our FastTech Pro Auto Kit. Please note that this is not a regular T8. The regular T8 would not work. This screw has a security bit in the middle, as I'm going to show you in just 1 second. There's a little piece in the middle that's a security bit, and a regular T8 will not work. Only a T8H will work, which is part of our FastTech Pro Auto Kit, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of people try to use a regular T8 and it does not work, and you end up stripping that screw. Now, there's about 7 screws that we have to remove. 6 long ones and 1 short one, which goes right here. We're gonna switch to a Phillips bit. The FastTech Pro Auto Kit is going to save you a lot of time with your repairs. As you can see here, it saves me the time from unwinding each screw manually. And as they say, time is money. Especially if you're watching this and if you're in the repair business. As you guys will notice, that one of the screws is shorter, which goes in here, and it's labeled with an S on the system. Once we have all those screws removed, we're going to use the pry tool from our FastTech Pro Toolkit, not the Auto Kit. This one is sold in our FastTech Pro Toolkit, which is separate. We're going to use that to get the last long screw out of there. When the screws are removed, we're going to be able to lift the cover off by lifting it up from the back like that. And now we have the cover off. The first thing I'm going to show you guys how to replace is the power supply, which is a very common point of failure. If your system's not turning on at all, that means if there's no beep at the front, there's no light, 99% of the times it's a defective or dead power supply. And we sell these on our website. This system right here has a 3-pin power supply, which is relatively rare. It's only found in the CECHH01, L01, K01 systems, or L0, K0 systems, or H0 systems. But we do sell this on our website at fasttechstore.com. There's some Phillips screws that we have to remove. There's one right here. There's a couple up here. And there's 2 screws here that we have to remove. I'm gonna use our FastTech Pro Auto Kit to get this screw out. The one on the left is a short screw, and the one on the right side is a taller Phillips screw. This one here, and shorter one here. Phillips screw at the front here. Also a long Phillips screw. There's two Phillips screws, one here and another one here. This one's a little bit more stubborn. It's no match for the FastTech Pro Auto Kit. Once you have the screws removed, we're going to remove the connector from the power supply by grabbing it from the sides and pulling it out like that. You can also pinch all of the cables at the same time and pull it out that way, but not one cable at a time. If you do it like this, you're going to break it. If you grab all of them at the same time, the force gets distributed and you can pull out the cable easily. You can also remove it from here, but I don't recommend removing it from the motherboard because a lot of people not only remove the cable but remove the connector that's part of the motherboard as well, which is not good for your system. Next, we're going to remove the plug at the back. There's a pinch connector. We're just going to grab it, pinch it from the top, and then pull it out like this. At this point, the power supply is free. We're going to lift it up, grab it from the front and back, and it's going to come out like that. That's the power supply right there. It's an EADP 300AB, and some of these power supplies have an APS model number. It's exactly the same thing. This one says EADP because it's an Asian system. Most of the Asian systems have an ADP power supply, but the US ones have an APS power supply. It's exactly the same thing, and both North American and Asian systems do 100 and 240 volts. So whether it's an EADP power supply or an APS, it's still going to work if you order it from fasttechstore.com. On our website, this power supply is listed as an APS 239, and if you're watching this in the United States or Canada, if you pull apart your CECHH01 system, it's going to have an APS 239 power supply. It's a 3-pin, and it's exactly the same thing as this EADP 300AB. There's no difference whatsoever. The only difference is these power supplies are found in Asian or European systems, but an APS 239 is found in North American systems generally. There might be exceptions, but generally that is the case. And if you want one of these power supplies, you can check us out at fasttechstore.com or fasttech.ca. Next, I'm going to show you guys how to replace the network adapter, which is this module right here. It's easily removable because it's got a cable in between. Some of these PS3s, this board was not modular and it was built onto the board. It was attached directly onto the main board. And as you can imagine, it's a lot harder to replace because then you have to desolder this chip and another chip that's here and solder it onto the board. But these ones are modular, very, very easy to replace. This is the board that's responsible for your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth transmissions. So if your Wi-Fi list is not showing up, or if your controller is not connecting to your PS3 wirelessly, or even with a cable and it only connects in safe mode, you need to replace this module. It's very, very easy to replace. There's a cable right here that we can simply lift up. There's some screws that we're gonna have to remove. We're gonna have to also remove the holster for the hard drive. Now that we got those screws out, we're gonna get this out of the way. There's a couple of more screws that hold the network module in. This one is severely stripped, so we're going to be very, very careful with this screw. I'm not going to use the auto mode on our FastTech Pro toolkit. I'm just going to manually turn it, and you can use this kit manually as well. because how bad this screw is, we don't want to use the auto feature because it's going to wreck the screw. The screw is completely toast. I have replacement screws for these, so we're not going to be putting this screw back in. There's another Phillips screw right here. This is different than the other Phillips screws that you're going to remove. The shield is going to come off at this point. And then we're going to be able to lift up the network module. There's still a cable that's connected, the antenna cable. We're simply going to grab the connector from the top and then lift it up gently like that, and it's free. This is the network module, ladies and gentlemen. This is a UWB-001, and this is responsible for the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth transmissions in your PS3. This is the Wi-Fi chip, and that's the Bluetooth chip right there. And this module also hosts the USB ports, and we do sell these on our website at fasttechstore.com or fasttech.ca. As I mentioned earlier, if your Wi-Fi or your Bluetooth is not working, you need to replace this module. Also, if your USB ports are not working, replacing this module will fix the problem. This is a very unique PS3 because none of the other systems have a modular USB port. Next, I'm going to show you guys how to replace the disk drive. Now, there is a procedure that goes along with replacing the disk drive. Now, what a lot of people do when they try to replace their PS3's disk drive is they'll remove the old disk drive and put a new one in from a different system and expect it to work like a PC. But it doesn't work that way. There's a logic board inside the disk drive that you have to remove from your old disk drive and put it into the new disk drive. That is because the logic board on this disk drive is paired to this motherboard. If you use the disk drive logic board from a different system or a different PS3, the disk drive replacement is simply not going to work. I promise you that. So I'm going to show you guys how to properly replace the disk drive on these systems. There's a ribbon cable that you have to remove right here. You can use our pry tool from our FastTech Pro toolkit. Lift up the ribbon cable. You can also use your finger, but be gentle with this clip. These are very easy to break. Lift it up gently. There's a power cable that has to be removed. You can remove it from the disk drive or the board, but I would recommend moving it from the disk drive. That way you don't break it. A lot of people, when they remove the connector from the board, they'll pull out the connector that's soldered onto the motherboard as well, and you don't want to do that. You can lift out the disk drive at this point. The cable is going to come out. We're going to get the system out of the way. The logic board is hidden behind this plate on these systems. On previous PS3s, the logic board is outside and exposed, but on these CECHH01 and L01 and K01 systems, the systems that have a KES410 disk drive have the logic board hidden inside this plate right here. So there's some screws that we have to remove. We're going to switch to a smaller Phillips on our FastTech Pro Auto Kit. There's some Phillips screws that have to be removed. There's one here. This one in the middle. This one here. There's two at the bottom. Now that we have the screws out, we have to remove this tape to get the ribbon cable out of the way. In a lot of cases, you are going to break this tape, which is okay. It's not a completely essential item. I am a firm believer, though, that everything is essential in these things. Because if the manufacturer put it there, it's there for a reason. So we're going to try our best to preserve this tape. You could also use a heat gun to heat up this tape slightly to make the adhesive unstick. But there's a slight chance that you might damage this ribbon cable while you're doing that. And I think the ribbon cable is more important than this tape. But it does help keep the cable in place, and it keeps some of the heat out of the disk drive because there is a gap in there, as you will see in a few seconds. So we were able to remove this tape perfectly. Now we're going to remove this clip that secures this ribbon cable. And now we should be able to lift up this piece and get it out of the way. We're going to use our pry tool to get in there, lift it up. This is part of our FastTech Pro toolkit. This is not part of the auto kit, but this is a kit with a manual version screwdriver that is sold separately. So now the back panel should come off. In some cases it's going to get stuck at the back here. You can simply lift it up, and we've got the ribbon cable and the bottom plate separated. You can remove this tape completely and remove the ribbon cable if you want, if you need to replace that ribbon cable for whatever reason. This is the logic board that I was mentioning earlier. This logic board has to be installed into your new disk drive for your disk drive replacement to work. Otherwise, your PS3 is not going to read your games. I promise you that. So when you order a new disk drive from fasttechstore.com, make sure to retain your old logic board, remove it from the system, as I'm about to show you in a few seconds, and install it into the new disk drive before you install the disk drive in your PS3. There's these two Phillips screws that secure the logic board in place. This one's a little bit stubborn, but that's okay. I just have to turn the auto kit a few times to get it out. Once that last screw is out, we're going to remove these cables. This one has a clip, just like the ones we saw earlier. Lift it up, and these two simply pull out like that and like that. Once you have those ribbon cables out, the logic board is going to be lifted out, and this is the logic board. This is a BMD 003. That's the model number right there. And these need to be paired to the motherboard of the system, otherwise the disk drive is not going to read games. That's the disk drive right there. If you want to take the disk drive apart at this point, there's these screws here and here that you're gonna have to remove, and I believe there's one here that you have to remove. Looks like the screws on this disk drive are already removed, so once the screws are removed, you can simply lift up the clips here and here and lift up the top panel. Now you have access to the laser lens. This is a KES 450 laser lens. As you can see, this has two heads, and the PS3s that came before this had a single head. That was the KEM or KES 400 series laser. And on the newer revisions, some of the CECHH01 systems and the K01, L01, H01, which is what this is, systems had a double-headed laser like this one. And there's a few ways to get the laser lens out. If you want to get the complete laser deck out, you have to remove these 4 screws that hold it in place. There's one here, one here, this one, and this one here. Once you have these screws out, you can lift up the deck. There's this cable that's sticking to the back with some tape. You can lift it up and it's just gonna come out. At this point, you can replace the laser deck itself. We also sell just the deck in case you need the laser deck, but I recommend replacing the whole disk drive if you come this far. We do sell just the laser deck, the disk drive, and even just the laser lens if you want to buy just the lens itself. And next I'll show you how to remove the lens, because some of you want to only replace the laser lens. I'm going to show you how to do that. The easiest way to get it out is to remove this screw right here. There's different ways to go about it, but the easiest and best way is to remove this screw right here. Once you get this piece out, you're gonna grab this piece here. This is the track on which the laser slides, and then just pull it out this way and up. And once you have it here, pull it out like this. It's gonna come out, and now the laser lens is free. There's a ribbon cable on it. We can remove like that. And that's how you remove the laser lens on the system. There's this piece that connects on the rail here. To remove that, just run your Fastech Pro Auto Kit on this screw, and this comes out. Because when you buy the laser lens, it's not going to come with this piece. Now you have the laser lens out. You get your new laser, of course, from fasttechstore.com. Put it back in. Get that screw in there to get the laser back in. This piece goes over this rail here like that, and now we're going to slide our laser in like this. We're gonna slide this piece through like that, and then push this down, because this is gonna go in here like this. Make sure that this piece is all the way in like that, all the way up like that. And now we're gonna push our laser down slightly, push it this way. Now the laser's seated properly, but this piece came out from here, which is fine. We're just gonna slide it back on and then push it down in place like that. You can hear it click, and now it's in place. And make sure that the laser glides up and down smoothly. Now we're gonna reinstall this piece. Like that. Now the laser deck goes in like that. Make sure the ribbon cable is going through. Reattach the laser ribbon cable. Push the clip down. Should be in all the way till the blue line. And we're gonna reinstall the screws that hold it in. And you want to tighten these in a diagonal pattern. You don't want to tighten one corner and then try to tighten the rest. It's not gonna end. It's gonna cause uneven pressure, and it might cause problems. And now that I have them in, I can now tighten all of them. Now that everything's nice and tight, the laser slides as it should, everything's in place. Now we're gonna reattach the roof mechanism. We're gonna line it up at the top. Make sure these clips are going over the sides here. This one here, this one here. There's some screws that are supposed to be here and here that we're missing, but we're gonna replace those screws. These were not in the system when we removed them. We're gonna put this screw here. There's a black Phillips screw that goes in here. And another black Phillips screw goes in here. On older PS4 models, there's 4 screws. There's 2 also that go here, but on this model, those ones are not present. And there's another screw that goes in here. Now we're gonna reinstall this magnet. Line it up. Top of the disk drive goes on. What you want to do is you want to lift this piece up like that, and then install the roof, and then push this piece down. Now we're going to install the logic board. And if you're replacing the whole disk drive, all you'd have to do is remove the old logic board from your old disk drive, get the old disk drive out of the way, and when you get the new disk drive from fasttechstore.com, you install your logic board. I showed you guys the extra steps in case you want to just replace the laser. As I mentioned before, I'll mention it one more time, this logic board has to come out of your old disk drive, otherwise your new disk drive is not going to work. The ribbon cable is going to go in like this all the way to the blue line, push the clip down. This one, you can simply line it up and push it in. And this one on the side, line it up and push it in. Push the logic board down. There's 2 black Phillips screws. One of them goes in here. And the other one goes in here. Now we're going to install the bottom plate. And on these, you want to straighten out this piece like this. These 2 pieces here, you want to straighten them out like that, and then install it into the disk drive like that. This piece is supposed to be like this, flush and inside, not on the outside. It should be inside like this, not outside as it was before, like that. And now we can reinstall the screws. The silver Phillips screws, these ones here, go here and here. We're gonna reconnect the ribbon cable that we removed. You can pull the tape slightly further back and maybe even remove it completely to make this part easier. Lift up the clip, slide in the cable, clip in place, push it down, reinstall the tape. Like that. And the remaining 3 black Phillips screws, which look like this, go here. Here. And the last one goes in here. And now this disk drive is ready to be installed back into the system. The ribbon cable will go in here like this, lift up the clip, slide it in all the way till the blue line, push the clip down, reconnect the power cable back in here on the side of the disk drive. The black cable is going to be facing this way. That's the right way to put it in. And now you're ready to reassemble the system. And now your disk drive is actually going to read new games once you've retained the old logic board and installed it into your new disk drive, as I demonstrated in this video. But we're going to be further disassembling the system and getting to the motherboard, so I can show you guys how to replace the paste and the fan and clean out the heatsink. We're gonna remove all the screws. They're all Phillips, and we're gonna remove all the screws that we see. There's some very stripped screws here, so we're not going to use the auto feature of our FastTech Pro Auto kit. And also I believe we're going to have to use a bigger Phillips head because the tread on the screw is completely gone. So we're going to have to use a much bigger Phillips head here and slowly remove the screw and then use the auto feature, because that screw is gone, as you can see here. So just switch back to the normal Phillips. I'm gonna get the smaller Phillips screws out of the way first. Now that we have the small Phillips screws out, I'm gonna switch back to the big Phillips head and remove these big Phillips screws. Gonna get this antenna out of the way. This is the antenna for the Wi-Fi module and the Bluetooth module. We're gonna remove these screws that hold the CPU and GPU against the heatsink. One of these screws is different than the rest, which is not supposed to be the case. But this system has been opened in the past, so I'm not entirely surprised. Yeah, definitely a different screw. But this is the right screw that all of you will have, which are the rest of the screws. As you can see, the system has had a long and rough life. As you can see, there's corrosion and rust on this plate here. At some point, some liquid or moisture got in the system. At this point, we're going to remove the fan connector, which is this connector right here. Make sure you grab it by the white part and not the off-white part. Notice how I'll pinch the white part and then I pull it up and then I remove it, wiggle and lift, and it comes out. I'll do it again because a lot of people struggle with this part. Another way of doing this is grabbing all of the wires here, all of the wires together, not one, because then you'll break it. All of the wires at the same time, grab it by the end, wiggle, pull. That's gonna be easier for most of you. Then we're gonna remove this grounding cable here. I highly recommend that you invest in our FastTech Pro Auto Kit, because as you can see that it saves me a lot of time when disassembling these devices. And time is money, especially if you're in the repair business. Now we're gonna remove the CMOS battery that stores date and time. We're gonna grab it. Again, grab it by the connector, the white part, not the off-white part. But hold the yellow part down by the motherboard, because most of the times, because of the age of these systems, the connector itself will come out. And if it does, it's fine, you can simply put it back in. But I'm trying to save you guys some time by doing it the right way. As you can see, it came out. But sometimes this connector will also come out, but if it does, don't panic. You can simply push it back in because it's got pins that stick out. Then we're gonna lift out this back plate, and now we have access to the motherboard. You can get the motherboard out by grabbing it from the front and lifting it up. And that's the motherboard right there. Let's take a closer look at the main board. These are the NEC token capacitors that are known to fail. A lot of the YLOD issues have been associated to these, but most of the times, in my opinion, it's soldering issue with the CPU or GPU chip. But sometimes it could be these capacitors as well. They're located on either side. The model number for this motherboard can be found at the back right here, and this is a DIA-001. And the part number for the motherboard is right here, so 1-875-938-21. And we sell them with the paired disk drive logic board. In case you skipped earlier parts of the video where I mentioned that the motherboard and the disk drive logic board must match, otherwise these systems are not going to read games. So we sell these boards with a paired disk drive logic board, and the complete disk drive is an option as well if you want to buy it with the disk drive with the logic board. Links are going to be in the description box and top comment as always. I will be showing you guys how to replace the thermal paste, and I'm also going to be showing you guys how to clean the heatsink in case your system starts to overheat. And to get to the heatsink, we're going to have to lift up this piece right here. In some cases there might be screws holding down this heatsink in certain PS3 models. There's no screws that are currently holding this one in. So we're going to lift this piece out, and we're going to remove this plate, and you'll see that the heat sinks are in here, and there are these two aluminum blocks that we can remove along with the fan assembly, but there are some more screws that have to be removed to get to it. This is a very unique PS3 design. There's no other PS3s quite like it, where the heat sinks are separate blocks. The first thing I'm going to show you guys how to replace is the fan. Before we get to the heat sink, there's some screws that hold the fan in. It's about 3. The last one here. And once you have those screws out, the fan simply gonna come out like so. The fan is a Nidec. It's a model G14T12BS2AF-56J14. You're also able to upgrade this fan to a 19 blade fan, something that looks like this. And we do sell this fan on our website at fasttechstore.com. As you can see, this one has more blades than this fan here. This is, I think, a 15 or 17 blade fan. A very common upgrade for these is replacing the fan with a 19 blade fan, and we do sell these on our website as well. And the 19 blade fan that you'd want is a model 8G1492-B045P0D. Now we're going to remove these screws that hold the cooling system and the heat sinks in place. There's 2 more screws here. Once you have these screws out, the back panel is going to come up like this. And now we should be able to lift up this piece, which is pretty filthy. And now we should be able to remove these heat sinks and clean them out. These are not as bad as I thought they would be. They're still caked with dust. If you've gotten this far, you may want to clean these out. There is other dust and dirt and grime in the case that we're going to clean out. I recommend using isopropyl alcohol, which we do also sell on our website. That's exactly what I'm going to clean it with. First, we're going to use a dry paper towel and just wipe the surface. And then the second step is spraying it with alcohol and then wiping it down again. Before we do a thorough clean on the case, I want to show you guys how to remove thermal paste off the heat sinks. First, we're gonna use a dry paper towel, wipe the old paste off. Same thing on the other heat sink. Then when you have that surface clean, we're gonna get another paper towel. We're gonna spray isopropyl alcohol onto the surface. Same thing on with the other one. And then we wipe the surface down one more time till we get a mirror finish like that. I'm going to do the same thing to the case and the fan. We also have to remove the old paste from the motherboard. Same process. Get a dry paper towel, wipe the old paste off. This is not stock PS3 thermal paste. Stock PS3 thermal paste is usually white. It's actually always white, and it falls off very easily. Even systems, I remember, that were 2-3 years old back in 09 when I started taking these apart, or 08. Even those systems had dry thermal paste by the time you took them apart, a year or 2 years after the manufacturing date. And this is not the default thermal paste. I know this has been replaced by looking at it. It's slightly better quality than factory, but not as good as the stuff we're about to put on it. Also gonna wipe all this extra dust off the system. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the chip. I'm gonna spray it with some isopropyl alcohol, and then with a fresh paper towel, we're gonna wipe it down so we get a nice and clean finish. And now we're ready to install new thermal paste on our PS3, and we recommend Thermal Grizzly. We sell this stuff on our website in all different kinds of quantities, whether you want it for 1 or 2 time use like this pack here, or if you're a repair shop or an enthusiast and you do a lot of thermal replacements, you want something like this, and this is what we're going to be using because we're professional grade. So we're going to get some of this thermal paste out using the spreader that's included when you order this at fasttechstore.com. We're going to get some paste out, and the key to applying thermal paste is getting the right amount. Not too much, not too little. You just want a perfect spread. And I should mention before I continue, these are the internal heat spreaders. The actual chips are underneath these, and you can remove these plates and replace it on the actual die surface, but most of the times it's not necessary. And number 2, and more importantly, it's very, very risky because there's sensitive components around the chip that you can damage. So I don't recommend the average user watching this at home remove the IHS. I have done it a few times myself for clients. It's very, very complicated, and it's very, very easy to mess up. So replacing the thermal paste on these surfaces on the IHS itself is sufficient, and it will fix your overheating issues in most cases. In some cases you might have to take the IHS off, but this is not one of those cases. So we're going to get some thermal paste, and we're going to start spreading it around. We're going to spread it evenly across the surfaces of these chips. Once you're done spreading the paste around, make sure to get any excess paste off the sides, even though thermal paste is not conductive, unlike liquid metal. But once you're done, you should have an even surface of thermal paste on both the CPU and GPU chip IHS. You get the motherboard out of the way, get the case back in, and as you can see, I've cleaned out the case. There's a bunch of crap in here that is no more, and it's as clean as we can get it. And now we're gonna reinstall the cleaned out heat sinks back into the system. For those wondering, this is not a hair, it's a mark on the system. Now this heat sink goes up top, and you'll see that there's holes in the heat sink, and there's guides on the case itself where the heat sink sits. So we're going to line up the heatsink on the guides, and if you just get one in, the other should also hook in place, and when it's in, it won't move side to side. You can make it fall out like this, but once it's in properly like that, let it sit. And the other heatsink goes here. It also has holes and guides, and you'll eventually feel it sit in place. It shouldn't fall out once you move it to the side. Now we're going to install the shroud, which goes over these heat sinks like that, just about here. Sits in place. There's some screws that hold it in. These Phillips screws. One goes in here, one goes in here. Now we're going to install the back plate with an on and off button, which has also been cleaned. And it just slides on like that. Like that. Make sure it's flush in the back. There's one screw that goes here. And one goes in here. Now we're going to reinstall the fan. It goes on like this. As you can see, this piece goes here with no screws, and then there's 3 screw holes where the screws go. Install these Phillips screws. Now this is the plate for this system. As you can see, there's some corrosion on this piece. This is not something that I could clean off. So I disassembled the CECHH01 system that you guys saw earlier in this video. As I mentioned, the systems are exactly the same. Doesn't matter what country you buy it in. If it's a CECH system, they're exactly the same, and the plates and parts inside are exactly the same. On this CECHH01 system, again, the same system that I showed you guys earlier in the video, the heat sinks, everything else exactly the same. And we're going to be using that system to donate parts to this system, and this is a good system, that one's not. So we're going to go ahead and just swap out these thermal pads here. This one is a little bit smaller. On this one, we'll get the good thermal pad over. This one was missing this thermal pad anyways, but it is on here. I'll just make sure that it's not on the board. That's the thermal pad that goes over this piece. There is some little bit of dirt on here that we'll clean off. So now we have this new plate with fresh thermal pads on the system. Now we're gonna put it in place, and now we're ready to install the board. This is the board I removed from the CECH CECHH01 system, and as you guys can see, the board model numbers are exactly the same from both systems. DIA001, DIA001. So whether you have a Japanese or a North American system, the systems are identical on the inside. All the parts are interchangeable on these. From an H01 to an H00 or H06, doesn't matter. Now we're going to install the motherboard back in. The side with the ports goes in first, like that. You make sure that the ports are lined up at the back. All right, and then push them through. Make sure they're flush at the back. And then seat the rest of the board in. The back plate from this system originally is also corroded to hell. So we're gonna take the back plate from the other H01 system that I showed you guys earlier in the video and put that plate in. And again, we have all the parts that you need at fasttechstore.com. And the only way to get parts for these is to disassemble working or sometimes non-working units, depending on what part you want, and get them that way, since even when these systems were new, Sony did not sell these parts because they don't want you to repair these things. And that's why we need your support. Make sure you smash the like button. Now we're going to install the heatsink clamps. As you guys remember earlier in the video, one of the screws was mismatched, but we got the right screw this time from our donor board. And when you tighten these clamps, you don't want to tighten one and then tighten the other. You want to do them one at a time, just a little bit. As you see, they're still loose. And I'm gonna do this one a little bit, and then this one a little bit. But they're all still snug. They're not tight. Now I can start going diagonally and tightening them. If you do it this way, the pressure stays evenly distributed, which is what you want. You don't want uneven pressure on the chips. Now that I got them all tight, now we can proceed. A lot of screws have to be reinstalled. Some of them are these bigger Phillips that go on the board, and some of the screws are these smaller Phillips type screws. Start by reinstalling the CMOS battery. Goes in like this. Boom. Push this thing down a little bit so it keeps the pressure on the CMOS, and then slide the CMOS in. This one went under the tape. We want it over the tape like that. Boom. Solid work only at Fast Tech. And now we're gonna install the screws back in. Some of them are these smaller Phillips screws, some of them are larger ones. And I'm gonna show you guys which ones go where. So the first small Phillips screw goes in this antenna here. This is antenna for the Wi-Fi and network module. We're gonna now install the Wi-Fi and network module back in. The USB slot in here. And we are replacing it with the CECHH01 system that we have. As I mentioned, that everything is the same on these systems. And since that system has parts that are in better condition, we're going to be using the parts off that system. There's a small Phillips screw that goes in here. There's a small Phillips that goes in here. Small Phillips in here. Another small Phillips in here. Now we're going to reconnect the fan. Like that. The connector is going to go in like this. The side with the gray wire is going to be facing up. Now we're going to install the grounding screw. gonna install this piece. More small Phillips screws. We're also getting fresh screws from the black system because the ones from this system were completely stripped. Since we are fully restoring the system, might as well also replace the screws. The only thing we can't really fix are the surface scratches on the system itself. Can't do much about that. And now the bigger Phillips screws, these ones here, go here, 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 and here. We're gonna reconnect this antenna to the Wi-Fi board. You're gonna line up this connector up top and then push it down. You're gonna feel it click into place. And now it's in. Let's reconnect the disk drive now. Lift up the clip for the cable. Insert the ribbon cable in all the way till the blue line, and then push down like that. Put the disk drive down and reconnect the power cable right here. And quickly make sure that I didn't miss any of the screws here. I did not. This one is empty. That's fine. That's for the case. This is not, it's not supposed to be a screw in there just yet. There's a big Phillips screw that goes in here. Now we're going to reconnect the power supply. The cable at the front goes in like this. I'm going to put it in place. Don't forget the connector at the back. It's going to go in like this. Push it in. Make sure this cable is tucked underneath this piece here. Now we're going to install some more screws into the power supply. Now there's this Phillips screw, that's a longer Phillips screw, and this Phillips screw. All right, this one goes in here. This one goes in here like that. There's another Phillips screw like this that goes in here. There's two holes, but this longer one goes in here. You want to make sure that the fan cable is out of the way. I almost screwed it in, no pun intended, but I noticed that it was under the power supply. You don't want to make that kind of mistake. Tighten the screw. Tighten the one in the front. This one also. It's another Phillips screw like this one that goes in here like that. That's where all the screws go. No one's showing you how to put these things back together in this much detail. Matter of fact, we have the only CECHH01 or CECHH00 repair video on YouTube as far as I know. So please go ahead and smash that like button, guys. That helps me out a lot. And subscribe to the channel. And buy any parts from fasttechstore.com, not just for your PS3, but your PS4, PS5, and beyond. Now we're gonna put the case back on. The front goes on first, so the teeth that you see here, these are gonna line up here on these points. Make sure all the cables are in before I do that. Everything is in like that. It's gonna snap in place. Now we can start reinstalling the final screws for the case. Now there's some Phillips screws that are left, the tall ones, and there's a short one here. The short one goes in this corner here where it says S. Short one's gonna go in here. And now the tall ones here, 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 and one goes in here. Tighten them up. The good thing about the FastTech Pro Auto Kit is it's fully rechargeable. So if it does run out of juice, which it is in this case, we can simply plug it in using a USB cable and we're back in the game. That's the final case tightened up. I'm gonna install the hard drive back in its enclosure. We're gonna reinstall the Torx T8H screw like that onto the case. We're gonna slide the case right around here. All right, right around here. Put it on. Switch back to our Torx T8H bit and tighten it up. Tighten it all the way in. Install the hard drive back in its slot. Perfect fit. Reinstall the Phillips screw. Reinstall the cover for the hard drive. Reinstall the stop. And we're done. We've fully cleaned this PS3 CECHH01 or CECHH01. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there is no difference between a CECHH01 or a CECHH00. This right here is a CECHH01 model that you guys saw earlier. As you can see, the internals are exactly the same. And we did use some parts for this system to make this system better. And if you guys need any parts from our website, make sure to check us out at fasttechstore.com. We supply power supplies, disk drives, motherboards, and everything in between for these systems. No matter how rare your PS3, we got you covered. Now I'm gonna quickly plug it in to make sure that the system turns on, everything is good. I'm gonna plug the power supply in. Red light at the front, press the power button, and everything's good. As it's supposed to be. The green light is coming on. And the system is already running a lot quieter than it was. The fan would kick up even when it was idling. But because we've replaced the thermal paste, cleaned out the heatsink, cleaned out the rest of the system, it is gonna run a lot better. The only thing that we can't really fix are the surface scratches on the case. Maybe some touch-up paint would do the job. But I really like the look of this PS3 silver CECHH00 system. This was a color that was only sold in Japan. So North American or Canadian system is gonna be black in color, a CECHH01. But as I mentioned, the internals are all the same. Thanks for watching another FastTech video. Before you leave, make sure to subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. That helps us out more than you know. This is CECHH01 from FastTech signing out, and I'll see you in the next one.